We all have people in our lives, friends, family members, coworkers, who we know would benefit from taking control of their health, and maybe they've talked about wanting to get in shape but haven't taken action. Maybe you see them struggling with energy, confidence, or just feeling stuck. And if you're into fitness, I feel like it's very natural to want to help, but it can be challenging dynamic because pushing someone too hard or coming on too strong can have the opposite effect. Instead of inspiring them, it can make them become more defensive, annoyed, or just less likely to start.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this in a lot of ways. I've gotten a lot better, so we'll talk about that later. But I've seen it with other people as well. Especially on social media. You'll see someone make a comment about wanting to lose weight. That's usually the biggest thing, right? I want to lose weight, or I want the clothes to fit better, or something. And then all of a sudden, there's like tons of responses afterwards. Oh, you got to do what I'm doing. This is the way to do it. You got to take this cleanse or this drink, or have these vitamins. Just all these things that they tell them what works, what they think's working for them, and what their friends should be taking. And even just a simple post like that, I can imagine it being like how overwhelming it is to see your friends who you think are probably trying to help out, and it, instead of really getting them on board, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, that's information overload. Maybe I'll think about this next week.
Hmm. Yeah, so today we're breaking down how to encourage someone to start their health journey without being pushy, what to say, what not to say, kind of plant that seed in their head, how to be a source of support without making them feel judged or pressured, because at the end of the day, you can't force someone to change, but you can be the person who helps them take that first step.
Yeah. Yep. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a good one. All right.
Yeah.
So tell us all about Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it was a good trip. Didn't do anything crazy, just a lot of hanging at the beach. The water was so blue, blue ass water. It was beautiful.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Blue water is just the best, right?
Yeah, I don't know, it just hits different.
It really does.
Yeah, so just hung out at the beach a lot. Got lots of steps, and I did a boat day too, and did a lot of snorkeling, which was super cool. I saw an octopus, which was a new experience.
That's really cool. How big was this octopus?
It was just hiding in like the rocks, so like I couldn't. It wasn't like all like stretched out and everything, but I just stopped moving, so I was just hanging out and observing.
Have you gone snorkeling before? I'm assuming you probably have.
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun. Like it's just cool to. It just puts you in such a different environment, just so at peace, just looking at everything. It's unreal.
Yeah, the ocean is such another world. It's like on one side it's like the coolest, most amazing thing ever, and then it's also like the scariest thing ever,
Right.
type of thing. But yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever gone like diving, like deep diving or anything?
No, I haven't. I almost got like my free diving certification. I had an opportunity to do that, but I ended up not doing it. But no, I haven't done scuba diving or anything like that. Have you?
No, I haven't. The snorkeling is kind of the limit of where I've gone. But yeah, it's always super fun, like you said. It's a whole other world to experience.
Yeah, and I was telling one of my friends too. I'm like, that was the first day in a while where I was just there was no stress, no anxiety, no other worries, just because I was so present and just enjoying the moment, which I feel like is very rare. So it's definitely good to get some of those moments in there, especially after super crazy month with work and everything. So it was a much needed reset.
Well, good, good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. Also, speaking of work and stress, I did get my newest in-body scans before I left for my trip as well. And I thought it'd be interesting to point out the results just because, as I'm sure many people have been following along, I've been pretty dialed in with everything. Body fat has been dropping, muscle mass has been going up. So we've been in such a sweet spot. But when I went and got my newest scans, my body fat went up 3%, which obviously isn't anything crazy, but I've been so locked into like nothing else has changed. And so I think it's very interesting to point this out because I know exactly why it bumped up, even though everything else was perfect and where it should be. And it's purely just because my stress and sleep has been an absolute mess. Just like we always talk about, those can be the silent killers when your stress is through the roof and you're having chronic stress or not sleeping, not prioritizing recovery in the way that you want. Your body will respond in the way. Like I can be doing all the right things, but my body is going in the opposite direction just because it's been in so much stress, physically, mentally, emotionally. So I think it's just such a good way to point that, especially because we just did an episode on sleep the other week, and just it's just proof in my journey and just proof if you're struggling and feeling stuck in your own journey, like look at these things because they do make such a big difference in how your body's responding.
Yeah, and you're such a great example because you know your body really well and you know what works really well, and especially when it changes and nothing else, in your diet or your workouts are changing, and so I think we just get so narrowly focused a lot of times on that workout and the nutrition, and sometimes we're like, man, you know what? I am dialed in on my workouts. I'm consistent. My nutrition is phenomenal. I mean, you can look at the numbers. Everything is where it's supposed to be. And we don't think about like how much stress can affect our body just holding on to the fat, and how sleep, and it's just there's just a lot more than just the workout and just the nutrition.
Yeah, it's super crazy to see. And just a good reminder and just drive that point home for me too, because that's obviously been a focus for me and it had to get sacrificed. It was just kind of one of those things that had to happen just with the crazy work season last month. But now I'm like back on it. Sleep routine needs to be on lock. We're back on track. But even too, like going into that scan, I already could tell like things were off. I already knew it was not going to be what I wanted just because of everything else going on. And that's okay too, but just something good to highlight.
Well, I think another thing is to think about. It's not the end of the world, right? It's not like you saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, my world's about to end. I can't believe it went up a little bit. It's a learning process. You learn about that and say, okay, this is probably what it was. You reflect on it, and then you move forward and you correct, and you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Just right back on the game train.
Yeah.
What's been going on with you? I know you have a fish story to share with me.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about, you were talking about snorkeling and stuff like that, and so I'm sure everyone's heard of this story, but I thought it was super cool, and so there's this like anglerfish, which apparently is a fish that, so to just describe it, it has this, it lives like super deep, like thousands of meters under the ocean, like in darkness, total
Mhm.
darkness year round, and it has this like little light thing that sticks over its head type of thing, one of those, right, and big teeth, whatever. And apparently there was this anglerfish that had swam all the way from the deep end up to the top of the ocean, right? Top of the water, and stuck his head up. And it looked like, and there was a photographer, a videographer around that area. There was a team doing some studies or whatever. And so he videoed him all rising, going all the way up to the top. And he took a look at the sunshine. And then he died. And it was like, yeah, it was almost like he was like, man, I have not seen the sun in my life. I know I'm feeling it. It's about over. I've got to do one glimpse of sunshine, and it went up there, and I could just see him, just thinking like, that's it. This is it. Like I can die now, type of thing. So, which I often feel like when I get out there, especially like when it's been really cold out or it's been dark out, I walk out there and I'm like, the sunshine, But yeah, you've got to check it out. It's really cool. I mean, he swam from the darkness all the way up, took a glimpse of that sun, and then died.
What a way to go out, to be honest.
I know, right? So it's pretty funny.
I know we always joke about, or we're always mentioning like how much the sun powers us up. I'm always like, I'm out photosynthesizing. So, I mean, I feel that. I feel that.
Yes, he just wanted to soak it in one time, one time.
I wonder if it's just because, do you think it's because he was like meant to live in the darkness and I don't like it's just like so different than his normal environment or
I mean, I have no idea because and I could be wrong, but I think I read that like they've only photographed like one other anglerfish because they're so deep they never ever come out of the dark. So it's like I don't think that anyone really knows why, other than hey, he just wanted to see the sunshine one time. It's like I'm going for it, you know. So I
yeah.
don't know. I thought it was interesting though.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I want to see what this guy looks like.
He's scary. He's a scary little dude, but
I just have that vision. I think it's from Finding Nemo. Just when I was like watching it as a kid, like there's that big one that comes up behind them. Like that's what
yeah,
I
I
picture
think
in my
I
head.
think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it's that fish. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah,
I'll
you'll have a
be.
little more empathy for him when you watch this.
That's fair. Well, cool. Let's get into topic for today. So, when it comes to giving advice to people, I've honestly learned just to not offer advice unless they blatantly ask. And this goes for people that, at least for me, people that need to make changes but aren't super passionate about like whether or not they do. So for me, it's like that dynamic with my parents. Like I know they need it. They always complain about shit, but every time I try to give them advice, they don't listen to what I say. So at that point, I'm like, there's only so much I can do. And kind of same with friends. Like I tell them what they need to be doing to get to where they want to be, but I don't know. For some reason, I think hearing advice from people close to you doesn't work most of the time for whatever reason. I guess it, of course, depends on the dynamic and like the level of respect you have for each other and the depth of your relationship. But for whatever reason, people don't see you as an authority sometimes when you're so close to them or don't want to take your guidance. I'm curious if you've had similar experience with that or what your take on that is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a similar experience. So I feel like a lot of people either they'll ask for advice and then they don't ever really take the advice, or they don't like you'll tell them some things or share ideas and things like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's great." My parents will do that sometimes. I'll say, "Hey, mom, dad, you guys really should be, eating more protein and lifting weights," and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've read a lot about that," and like 100%. I'm like, "Oh great, so you're gonna do that?" They're like, "Well, no, we walk a lot." It's kind of, and they do. They walk all the time, which is fantastic. But it's almost like they know what they should be doing, and they're like, "We agree 100%. You're right. That's awesome." I'm like, "Great, you're gonna do it?" Well, no. So it's kind of like, why? I don't really get it. But so yeah, I don't know. And then I also feel like, tell me if you have these experiences. I feel like people tend to, and I think I have an idea, maybe listen or follow the advice of just random friends that have lost some weight rather than someone that is an expert in that field, and I'm like, what? This guy, he's a personal trainer. He's telling you this. Why are you listening to this girl who, got in some cleanse and, accidentally lost some weight and gained it back, 5 days? So I almost wonder if it's just a comfort level of, well, I know this person really well, and they're just like me. Like, I see someone who's in the gym all the time. They're just not who I am, and they're not like me, and so that might be too hard or too out of my zone. But this person's just like me, and it sounds like it was really easy, and so maybe I should do what they're doing.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. I could see it coming from that. Like, I really don't know the answer. I think it's always just a funny dynamic, especially when you're giving them the exact tools. And like you said, they agree, they know that's the right thing, and then they just don't do it for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah, even with my parents, like they complain about all these health issues that they're dealing with or all the pain and stuff, and I literally lay out the plan for them. Hey, this is what you need to do. This is gonna help, and then they just go and kind of just do what they've been doing or do the opposite. I'm like, all right, at this point, that's why I don't blatantly try to give advice anymore, just because if they really want to, they're gonna take it and implement it. But if not, I'm not gonna spend my energy trying to force someone to change or trying to like help people if they aren't ready to be helped.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think we can't force people to change, just in life in general, right? And so we can want them to change as much as possible, and we may have all of the answers, or at least be very knowledgeable in that field, whatever it may be. But if they're going to change, they're going to have to do it on their own. They're going to have to want to make that change themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think the idea needs to come from them too. When you're
Yeah.
planting the idea in them, like you immediately reject it for whatever reason. When it comes from yourself though, and you get the idea, then that's when it's more likely to stick. So it's kind of more of planting the seeds and you're trying to get them to adopt that as their own idea, as opposed to being like, hey, this is what you need to do.
Oh yeah, that's such a great point. I think all of us are so stubborn that way, right? Like you tell us to do that, I'm not gonna do that. But if it's your idea, you're like, I'll tell you what's a good idea, and you're like, I just told you to do that.
Right.
That's a great point. I totally agree with that.
I know, and even I get like I notice I do that sometimes too. People like give me certain advice, and like for whatever reason, I'm just like, no, like I don't want to listen to that. I don't. So I'm guilty of it too. I think we all do that to some extent.
Yeah, no, I've done it for sure. And when we go back to my parents, my parents used to say, "Oh, we're walking." I'm like, "Walking? Like, what is it?" Back in the day when we thought walking was an exercise. Really, I was like, "Walking? You need to be running or doing something." And now I'm like, yeah, you know what? Walking is a fantastic form of cardio. So yeah, I get it.
I know we're preaching about that every podcast, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I tell everyone, walk. It's amazing.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about why people don't start, because I think it's usually not about not wanting to be healthier. I think it goes deeper than that. A few common reasons people hesitate. One can be fear of failure. They've tried before, didn't see results, so they don't want to go through that again. or just overwhelmed, like you were mentioning earlier. They think they need to completely change everything overnight and that feels impossible, or they're just seeing all the crazy shit on social media and what everyone else is doing and they're not sure what the best path is, or just feeling judged. If someone feels like they're being called out for being unhealthy, they'll automatically get defensive and kind of lash out. So I think that could be a common reason kind of why people also don't listen to people close to you, just because like they feel that judgment, even if it's not intentional, that like you're not trying to make them feel judged, but immediately it's reflecting on what they're doing and they realize that they're not where they want to be. So they act in defense, or just not knowing where to start, like not sure what to do. So like analysis paralysis, so they just end up doing nothing, or just being comfortable in your current habits, even if they know change is needed and the routine feels easier. It's just easy to stay comfortable. Of course, any sort of change, any sort of stepping out of your normal comfort zone is going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. So all of those can play a role into why people don't necessarily want to start their journey.
Yeah, we'll address all those. I think those are all really solid points. I mean, you can probably find, talk to somebody that's had at least one of those reasons why they don't, and so really what we're doing is we're trying to encourage somebody to become healthier or start a health journey or something like that. We really want to meet them where they're at, and this is something I've been guilty about in the past when I was a younger trainer. You have all this knowledge and it comes from a good place. You're excited about it and you want to share, and you just start throwing all this advice at them, everything that works well for you. But that, and it may all be great advice, but it may not be what they need at that time. And so we don't want to be, really passive with it. We want to make sure, but we want to make sure we include them on these things, share resources, talk to them about things without feeling like we're pushing it on them and telling them this is all that you have to do, right? And then, there's sometimes, I'll be honest with you, there's sometimes where I refrain from saying something, or just because I don't want to come off as like I'm judging them. I feel like if I make a comment about them becoming healthy or something like that, I don't want them thinking that I'm like, oh, well, I'm telling you this comment because I'm judging you and your weight or something like that. And so it's almost like I'd almost rather not say anything. And so we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's especially hard, like when we're in a position like us, like we're obviously so passionate about fitness. We want to see everyone winning. We want to share our knowledge and see people being able to transform and like experience what we've experienced in our journey. But yeah, it's a very fine line in having that right balance to make sure that you aren't overdoing it or aren't making people feel judged in that process.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. I mean, we love to do this because we like to make a difference in people's lives. Like we want to see people change. We want to see people happier and more joyful in their life, and so but and this really is anything in life. If you're preaching, lecturing it to somebody, that's probably the fastest way to make them start tuning you out and not listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel like you're talking at them or down to them, instead of like with them, like we said, where they're at, then a lot of times they'll just shut you out. So instead of things like, hey, you need to be working out, you should be working out, or like, I don't get why you don't just eat healthier, or why aren't you doing it this way? I think some better way to reframe things are things like, hey, I started working out recently. I just started my own health journey, and man, I feel so much better. I have so much energy. Have you ever thought about doing something like that, or have you ever had a program that's worked well for you? So you're kind of like sharing what's really worked for you. You're not telling them they have to do anything. You're sharing what's worked for you, and you just kind of want to start a conversation with them. Another way is like, hey, I've been trying to eat better. I found some new meals that I really like making. They're really easy. They're really nutritious. I think you'd really like some. Could I send some to you, or even just asking them, hey, do you have any meals that are really nutritious that you like? And they're like, oh yeah, I have this awesome meal, and send me yours. You start sharing, and it's kind of like just starting that conversation and getting them involved with it. And like you said, without telling them they have to be doing anything, and you're just including them in your journey. So you have to make it so that they look at you as someone that's very approachable about it. They don't think you're judging, they don't think you're preaching or lecturing, and they're just comfortable with sharing their thoughts and concerns and fears, and then wanting to ask you questions about what works really well for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't want to make them feel guilty. No one wants to be shamed into making any sort of change. even the comments like you should stop eating that or aren't you trying to lose weight. I mean, I think most people don't approach it like this, but we obviously hear that sometimes. Or you'd
Yeah.
feel so much better if you just exercised. It just makes people feel bad about themselves, and when people feel bad, they're usually retreat into their old habits even more. So instead of making it about what they're doing wrong, make sure that we can shift to focusing on what they could gain. So kind of like you said, like ever since I started getting steps in, I've had way more energy. You should try it. Or I found this snack that's really good. You'd like it. Just stuff like that. Finding ways to tie in even your personal journey into theirs and just putting out suggestions like that can be super helpful.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've made some of those comments, and again, out of a good place, and a good heart, I really wanted to help that person, but making a comment like, oh my gosh, you're going to eat that right now, or I can't believe you're eating two of those, or whatever it may be. It's not going to make them feel good. They're probably going to eat it anyway, and then again, and then you become someone that they don't really want to go to talk to about this at all, and then you just lost out on an opportunity to really help someone in life. So for people who are all into fitness, right? They're like, this is my jam, right? I love this. It's easy to think, hey, why don't you just commit to it and do it, right? Like I get up every day and go to the gym, and why can't you do it, type of thing. But for someone who's never been consistent, whether they've tried this before or brand new to this, it's super overwhelming, And so, I mean, you see a lot of social media posts, right? Of people like, you just got to go all in. You got to wake up at this time. You got to do this, and for some people it does work. It's super motivating. Then they fall off, right? Or a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't do that. Why are you yelling and screaming at me and telling me I have to do this and that? And so instead of like saying, okay, here's what you got to do. You got to track every single macro. You got to be in the gym like every single day of the week. You got to, you hit a million steps and meal prep everything, and throw them everything out of them at once. It's start simple. Things like, hey, I'm going for a walk. Would you like to go with me? Or say, hey, I like to walk on weekends. Would you like to join me on the weekends? Or hey, there's a really cool place that I heard that's really has some healthy options. I've been wanting to try it. You want to join me for lunch? Or things like that. And really, I guess, focus on kind of going back to the meet them where they're at. If they've never worked out before, working out one day a week is a big win, And so for us, we think about, that's a small win. They got in every week, but for them, it's a big win. So we want to see, more of those. And it could be just going for a walk every day, not necessarily worrying about how many steps, or maybe they're trying to add, just add more protein. They're not tracking it, but they're just adding a little more protein to each meal. We want to celebrate those small wins and talk to them about that, and really should approach it in that way of thinking, we're not going all in, do everything you have to do, but let's just figure out what can they start with and try to make these things consistent and build from there.
Mm-hmm. And that's how everyone should approach it. And even if you're starting your own fitness journey, like we should always be starting small. That's what we're always preaching. That's how we work with clients. Start small with something manageable, achievable, and then build on it from there. So even if you're at a point where you're at a higher level, I'm sure at some point you started with those very small habits, which is going into the gym a couple times a week or making those small shifts in diet. So you need to remember that if you are trying to encourage someone in your life, you need to start small, because otherwise they're going to burn out, because you can't go 0 to 100. You got to start with the small habits and build on it.
As we're talking about this too, we're really focusing on how to share with, someone that about how to start it. But really, this is also how you talk to yourself.
Mm. Such a good point. Yeah, because it is easy to get in that mindset of I'm not doing enough, or I need to do more and all this, but start small. Approach and the way you talk yourself the same way. I think that's always a great way to check yourself too, because we're so hard on ourselves in general. Even just with any progress that we make, we're always beating ourselves down. So treat it like you are talking to one of your friends, because I guarantee you're going to be a lot nicer and more supportive of them. So it's always good to reframe that and look at how you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, I like that mindset of pretend like, you're talking to your friend. There's a lot
Mhm.
of things that we say to ourselves that we would never tell our friends.
Oh yeah.
They're like, well, why are you talking to yourself that way? So yeah, and get those small wins in and then celebrate them, and that could be, sharing, with a friend, sharing with your spouse, just saying it out loud, look in the mirror and say, man, I got another workout in today, or I walked today, just celebrate and say, this is awesome. I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, actually, my friend in Puerto Rico, we were talking about this, and he gave me a really cool, just little tip that I actually want to incorporate in my daily life. It doesn't necessarily apply to this, but just applies to fitness and just stuff in general when you're looking to improve and celebrate yourself. It's just thanking yourself
Mhm.
for even just the little things that you do that, even if they're automatic, that you don't really realize. Like, hey, I just went and got in a workout. I pushed myself. Like, thank you for doing that. Or if you sign a new client or whatever it is, like whatever you're working on or something that you're doing, just take a moment to sit back and appreciate what you just did, what you accomplished, even if it seems very simple and automatic. Just thank yourself for it.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, especially because I always struggle to zoom out and just like I'm always like rushing from one thing to another. So it's a good way to just slow down and be like, all right, like I'm actually am accomplishing things, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if I'm feeling overwhelmed. So I think it's just a good check for anyone, regardless of what you're working towards.
Yeah.
So, how to go about actually encouraging someone to start? I think one great tip is be the example, not the enforcer. You got to live it yourself. People are way more likely to take advice from someone who practices what they preach without shoving it down their throat. So instead of telling them what to do, just do your thing and invite them along, kind of like we've been talking about this whole time. Do your thing, go to the gym consistently, make healthy choices when you go eat out. Talk about how good you feel from your habits. When people see you thriving and doing your thing, they're going to start asking questions on their own. And this is a great way to plant that seed, like we were talking about earlier. This is a method I always use now. Like I said, I'm not trying to provide advice to anyone unless they come to me. I'm always locked in with my habits. I'm always confident with my routine and what I'm doing. And people see that and catch on, whether that's on social media, whether that's in real life. And even when I used to work in the office, this is the way that I made the most change with my coworkers because I feel like a lot of people can relate. Notoriously, I feel like any sort of office space is just the everyone is like very sedentary. A lot of people are out of shape. There's a lot of junk food in the kitchen, break room, stuff like that. And I just was always in there every day, meal prepping, or I had my meal prep. I'd go make breakfast in the morning. I'm out walking, getting steps, and it started with a lot of pushback. People would come into the kitchen and be like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you making this?" Or like stuff like that. They're like, "Oh, there's donuts here. Why don't you eat that?" So it started with pushback, but then the people that were interested started asking questions because they saw me being so consistent and cooking every day, always eating my meal prep instead of all the pizza or whatever they had in there. And so they started asking questions. And so I'd help with just giving them simple stuff that they asked about. Again, not trying to overwhelm them, just like answering their questions and saying, hey, this is a good starting point. And then eventually they'd catch on. They started asking more. And then I love when people would even start sharing their wins. Like they'd come to me like, hey, I just got in this awesome walk, or look, I made this new recipe, stuff like that. And they come to me because they know I can appreciate that. And then we're on the same path and we're aligned with those same habits. So it starts with you ultimately.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also there's so many people that see that example that don't say anything to you. You know, and so
Mhm.
you might be making an impact that you're not even aware of. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've had experience where just I've had random people, I shouldn't say random people. I've had people that know me randomly come up and will make a comment like, "Hey, I got in 10,000 steps today." And, you know, I hadn't been talking about them or just anything. They just assumed that I would be someone that would appreciate that. And you know, when someone does that, I always make sure I'm like, "Oh man, that's amazing, that's awesome." You know, how'd you do this? You know, I want to make sure that they feel like I'm blowing it out of the water because that's such a big cool thing to share. But yeah, I've had that with people that haven't talked about their health journey at all. They just know that that's the life I live, and so I think they saw that as a chance. Ooh, this is someone that would really appreciate that.
I love that kind of stuff because it like when you practice what you preach, it shows. Even if people don't acknowledge it, if people don't say anything, like people are watching and observing what you're doing, and the right type of people that are aligned with you are going to catch on and start to follow in your footsteps. So, super important to lead by example.
Yeah, it really is. All right, another thing is find out what they really care about. You know, I think sometimes we push our whys, right? You know, we've done an episode before where we talked about finding your why and how to establish that and how to use that to fuel your workouts and your mindset on this. But and not everyone has the same why, you know. And so if we push everything that we want to do because of what our why is, and it may not resonate with them at all, right? So some people don't really care about their aesthetics, how they look, or they don't really care about weight loss, but they do care about things like, no one said, oh, I don't like having energy with my kids. Like everyone's going to want to have more energy for their kids or for their grandkids, Everyone likes to feel strong, at least, and capable, at least to be able to do the everyday things. Not being in pain all the time. I mean, that's a huge one. We all want, and then having a long, healthy life, and not just I want to live to 100, but I want to live a really high quality life. So when I am older, I'm not in pain. Able to enjoy the time with my friends, with my grandkids, things like that. So if you can connect, fitness to what truly matters to that person, whether it's playing with your kids, or it could be like excelling in their career, or just simply feeling like confident every day, then they're going to be more invested in it. They're going to be, feel like you really understand them better. We've said this before, but fitness is more than just looking good. That's kind of a byproduct of it, but it's really about making that life, enhancing that life that you actually care about. So I guess we want to reframe it, like instead of saying like, hey, you should work out, maybe something like, man, you know what, I've had the energy to run around with my kids like all day long, and I'm not just like super exhausted, or you know what, I've been, ever since I've started lifting, like I haven't experienced that back pain, things like that. And so just kind of showing them what it's done to you, how that experience has enhanced your life.
Yeah. And then also don't forget to make it fun and social. A lot of people don't start because they think fitness is boring or miserable, which one if it is, then you're doing it wrong. It's the wrong plan, but that's a different topic. But instead of selling them on some strict meal plan or brutal workouts, make it fun. Invite them to go for a hike together, do a fitness class together, do some sort of challenge. We run that in our community. Join a step challenge, do something together, have accountability. Get together and make dinner together, make healthier versions of food together, or snacks together. I think most people just need one good experience to change their perception, and doing it with loved ones and as a team makes such a big difference. I I like doing my thing, but also like inviting people to join in healthy activities. I think cooking is especially good one that you can do with family, friends, significant others, anything like good quality time to hang out and then like make a healthy meal. I think it's so great to get people involved and make it more enjoyable, and be in it together so they don't feel like they're doing it alone.
Well, I like to think about if it was a kid or a bunch of kids, and presented something that was just super boring, or they just hated, like they're going to tell you, and they're not going to be interested in it, and they're not going to want to, be involved at all. So, like you said, you got to make it fun, just like with kids, if you make it entertaining, enjoyable, something that they're going to look forward to, then the buy-in is so much better.
And a lot of times too, like I'll just be doing my own thing, like I'm just locked into my habits, but just invite those type of people with you. Like if you're going to the gym, invite them. If you're going for a walk, invite them. If you're gonna make this dinner, invite them with. I think that's just a great way to get people involved too, but without pressure on them. So they know you're doing your thing, but they're welcome to join.
Yeah. And then we talked about this a little bit too, but we want to celebrate their efforts, right? Not just the results. So I think a lot of times we think about, oh, like this person looks like they've lost weight. You want to comment, hey, you look great, type of thing. But they need that encouragement, not the pressure to feel like they have to get those results. So instead of waiting for them to start losing weight, if you know someone has started, whether it be a couple weeks or a couple months, whatever that may be, celebrate the effort. Wow, you've really been consistent with going to the gym. I've seen you 3 times this week. That's amazing. Or, hey, I saw you in the neighborhood walking, every day. I think that's awesome, or I'm so proud of you for prioritizing yourself. I know you're making some changes to help you just become healthier and start putting you first, and so when someone feels recognized for their effort, one, they're going to feel amazing, but that really helps them to keep going. They feel like, oh, I'm on the right track. People are noticing, my efforts and what I'm doing. And it's just that burst of just like feel good, attitude and mindset.
Yeah, not like few things are better than that feeling, and especially I love hearing those client wins. Like that's always the highlight of their week when someone in the gym comments on that, or someone that they haven't seen in a while comments on their progress or their consistency or anything. It makes their week. And so I think that's just a good thing to keep in mind too, just in general, like encourage people, spread more love and positivity. Especially if you see them putting in the work and making these changes, even just a comment like that can make all the difference and inspire them to keep going and keep pushing harder.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, we're so hard on ourselves. We're, our biggest critics. And I mean, I've had clients where, have said, oh, this person, or I've had these people, compliment me, and they're like, wow, I didn't feel like I look like I've been losing weight, and all these people are like, you look amazing, type of thing. Or sometimes people will frame everything the wrong way, right? So like, hey, you know what? I only got in the gym like 3 times this week, and so they're kind of beating themselves up a little bit. And then someone will say, man, I saw you 3 times this week. That's amazing. And so that's a totally different way to look at things. And so 3 times at the gym would be awesome week. That's so awesome. So I mean, I really do think we need to start focusing and prioritizing, celebrating the efforts of people, not just the results that we get from them.
So good. Yeah, and overall, it just like reinforcing the positive behaviors that you want them to continue, even if it's just encouraging them like that. And this is something that applies to other areas of life too, and even just relationships in general. Like if you're working on something with your partner and you want them to do more of it, like just celebrating the fact that they did and be like, oh, thank you, it's amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I love it. That's going to inspire them to do it more. And same thing applies to fitness.
I loved what you said. You said reinforce the positive habits that you want to see in them.
Mm.
And I think that's so great. Just like you said, I mean, that's just going to be such a big, positive, uplifting way to think about, oh, wow, these people are really, or this person is really supporting me because they see my efforts and they see that I'm working really hard. And they're going to end up wanting to be more like that. All right. So at the end of the day, you can't force someone to start a health journey, right? But you can make it easier for them to want to. And so we want you to lead by example, be supportive, make it fun, and then meet them where they're at. And if someone that you really care about is struggling, be patient. I like this a lot. You never know when that seed that you planted will be the thing that finally makes them start. And it may be a long time. I mean, there's been times where I've talked to people about working out or about health journey, and it's a long time, and all of a sudden you see them start doing something. And you're like, oh wow, like it's been a long time since I talked to them about it, but look, they're making some. They've got to, like we said, they got to figure out when they really want to do it, and then sometimes it just takes a long time for them to really get rolling.
Yeah, and I think too that's where it comes the leading by example. I feel like that's like the biggest way to get people changed, just leading by example, doing your thing, being consistent with that. And the more people see you being consistent, the more it's going to be reinforced with every single time that you're doing it. So I think that's always the biggest key, and that's what it comes down to, at least what I've noticed in my journey. And speaking of community and encouragement, if you're looking for a space for like minded people working towards the same journey as you, that's exactly why we built our private school community. I'm posting new content every week. We're running challenges. You get access to all kinds of resources, workouts, meal guides, and expert guidance. And it's completely free to join. So I'll link that in the show notes and share this with someone else who needs to hear it. And appreciate you guys tuning in as always. We will see you next week.